On the count of five, four, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to Success Series with Ravi, a podcast series where I talk to successful people from all around the world and learn from them success secrets and share it on my platform. If you want to take inspiration from my channel, you're welcome to subscribe here because we have got some amazing guests in the coming days, including today. My Twitter handle is Zen Compounding, so I'd love to connect there as well. So, as I said, today I have a special guest, and usually I get really excited and thrilled whenever I meet somebody who lives a life with a life of intention, with a certain depth and sacredness that one bestows to life. The guest we have today embodies many of these qualities. His name is Deepu Asok. Deepu is an engineer, illustrator, blogger, but to limit his identity to these labels, only these labels would be unfair because he does a lot outside his day job. He's getting immensely popular on Twitter and offers some very precious value to the marketplace with his creativity and wisdom. And I'm very curious to have this conversation. So let's welcome him. Hello, Deepu. How are you doing today?
Hi Ravi, how are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's a privilege.
The privilege is mine as well, Deepu. And last time we chatted, you had on your website a link which welcomes all strangers from anywhere, any part of the world, to have a curiosity chat. And thank God I did that because I could know a beautiful soul with that interaction. I loved it so much that while I was having that interaction, I loved the depth of that interaction, and I thought, my God, we could have recorded this, but then glad that we could meet again for this conversation. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Um, so Deepu, as I said, I what charmed me about you is this certain depth that you bring to life, and there is a certain intention that you live your life with. Um, so tell us what went into influencing you to become who you are today. Um, like the way you were growing up, middle years, and lately, what were the influences? The influences could be books, people, culture. Maybe you could shed some light from your upbringing, from your childhood.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in South India. It's a state called Kerala, right? And I was living in Trivandrum, which is the capital of Kerala. So I went to this boys' school, and I had my routine, school life, and I was not a big fan of school, like most people. So like I was not a very like intentional or very like curious person like from my childhood. Like
Mhm.
I was always interested in things outside of school, right? So that was me. And I was not like an avid reader or anything until I was like in middle school or high school.
Right.
But I think sort of a turning point for me, it's kind of a cliche, but I came across this book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And it was like a random event. Like I was there are these street vendors in India. I don't know if you know that they'll have these old used books on the roadside, and I was
Right.
just like going there and I saw this book and I was like, okay, what is this magic of thinking big, right? And I picked up the book. It was like, I don't know, 15 or 20 rupees, I think. And I brought the book home, and that was sort of my first entry into like serious reading. I used to do
Right.
these casual readings from the library, like all
Right.
this Enid Blyton, Harry Potter kind of stuff.
Right.
But this was sort of my serious sort of like self-help or management business side of books, right? And I started
Right.
reading it, and the ideas were like very unique to me, at least from my perspective at that point in time. And this is
Right.
what I believe.
What age were you then?
I think I must have been like maybe 16 or 17 at that point. Yeah.
Got it.
And I always believe that the right books come to you at the right time when you're ready. So
That's
I
correct.
think I was ready at that point for that kind of an information to appear. And the reason I say this is maybe if I had seen this book like 2 years ago, I wouldn't have noticed it, or I wouldn't have been so much attracted towards that book. But that
Got
book
it.
somehow captivated me, and the ideas captivated me. And I slowly started experimenting with my own life, all these little tips and tricks that he was mentioning in the book, like
Right.
experimenting with your confidence, right? Like, for example, like when you go into a conference hall, your natural tendency is for most people at least, is to find a place where you sit, right? You either go to the middle rows or you go to the back rows. So most
Okay.
people go to the back row. A few people go to the very few people come to the front row, right? And
Right.
then I started experimenting this. I started going and sitting in the front row, right? Making myself presented in the front of the audience, and I was asking questions, and I started experimenting all these things. So it was almost like a small experiment with my own personality, and I started doing these things, and obviously I could see many improvements in the way I think, the way I behave, and the outcomes that I was getting in life. And that was sort of the beginning. um, and then I finished my bachelor's in India. I did my engineering. I have a background in mechanical engineering. And then I
Right.
came to the US to do my master's, and that opened a whole new world to me. I was suddenly, aware that there are a lot more opportunities, a lot more possibilities, things and ideas, and mental models that I have never even imagined
Right.
possible. So that was sort of the beginning. Um, and in terms of key influences, so that book led me into this whole world of business reading and self-help reading and all that kind of stuff. And then I got into psychology, then I got into economics and all this kind of other auxiliary kind of areas. So I think like once you get that entry point, it's almost like you make these connections and it's like a tree that branches out.
Right.
And then like once you really enter the world of like knowledge, you really realize that you don't know anything at
Mm.
all. Like
That's true.
what you don't know is so much more vast than what you already know. And I think that's like the realization for like any student to begin the journey of self exploration and curiosity and learning. So that was sort of the learning part for me, right? The book side. And then on the spiritual side, I was very interested in the spirituality side of things because growing up I was confused about religion and I had all these questions. So I was always attracted to spiritual side of things. So I used to read a lot of Osho books in
Right.
the beginning, and Osho had a way of putting the spiritual side of things, complex topics like consciousness and awareness and all these kind of things into simple language. I mean, Osho's reading is very lucid. I mean, Osho's writing is very lucid. And I think, in fact, he never actually wrote like a book. I think most of his books were like transcripts based on the speeches he gave. And that was my entry point into spirituality. And then I explored meditation, and that had a huge influence on me. Sadhguru was also a huge influence on me. His writings and his I follow a practice called inner engineering. It's like a 21-minute meditation practice I do every day in the morning.
Right.
And that has been a huge influence on things. Then obviously, like has been a huge influence yeah, in the past few months. Like it's an amazing place. So we'll get into that. Yeah,
Since how long have you been meditating?
I have been meditating seriously since 4 years, since 2016.
What does seriously mean? Maybe you could shed some light on your meditative practice. What does inner engineering meditation? How does it work?
Sure. So the whole philosophy or the science behind inner engineering is that like the whole seat of your experience is the inner dimension, right? Like
Mhm.
whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever happening in the world, it's all happening within you. So the premise is that if you can engineer your interior, right, your inner dimension in a way that it is balanced, it is carefully put together, then your experience of life will be much more profound, much more better, and everything will and your whole life will transform. So that is the whole idea. And inner engineering itself, it's a combination of the physical hatha yoga, and
Mhm.
then there is also an elements of pranayama, breathing practices, and then
Right.
obviously just like something like an awareness meditation where
Right.
you're sort of watching the breath. And this is a 21-minute practice that was designed by Sadhguru. Um, and the initially when you get initiated into this program, it's a 4-day program. So you basically go there, they teach you this practice over the period of 4 days, and it's not just the meditation. They actually talk about the philosophy and like the science and the why you are doing this, and certain aspects of the mind, certain aspects of the body. So they explain to you this entire spectrum of details about what is inner engineering and why are you doing all these things, right?
Right.
And you come back home and then you practice this for like twice a day for 40 days. It's to get it into your system, right? You develop a habit for it, and then you do practice it once a day. Um, and this has been like radical transformation in my life. The reason I say this is that I feel like life is always a battle between your compulsive nature and your conscious nature, right?
Right.
There is this compulsive side of you that wants instant gratification, wants everything like the pleasures, and you're chasing that. And there's a conscious side of you that is aspiring towards greatness, aspiring towards freedom, liberation, all those kind of things. So once I started practicing the meditation, I started getting more into it. I saw these sort of compulsions drop away. The
Right.
compulsion towards food, the compulsion towards other things, it slowly drops. And then you become more conscious and conscious in your life. So that has been a huge influence on me. I mean, the number one thing I tell all my friends is that even a 10-minute meditation practice, if you do every day, it's like recalibrating your mind. And like when you go into like the thick of things, when where things are like hectic, you yourself are like the eye of a storm. Like
Right.
you are calm inside, even though things are going crazy around you. You can maintain the
Right.
inner composure, and that's when you can really make good decisions.
Right.
So it impacts your decision making process a lot.
So what do you do exactly in those 21 minutes? Do you it's just breathing technique for the 21 minutes? Where do you focus your attention to?
So it's a combination, as I said, it's a combination of breathing. It's like a pranayam, and then there is a chanting. Like there is an arm chanting for like you chant for like 21 times, and
Right.
then you sort of watch your breath. So it's a combination of these three aspects.
So mostly you're watching your breath. So your attention is focused towards watching your breath, right? It's not visualization or anything of that sort,
No,
right?
you're not visualizing or anything. I mean, the whole point is that is sort of like distract your mind, or like not to distract, but to focus your mind on a certain aspect of your activity that is already happening in your body, right?
Correct.
Like in I think vipassana meditation, the whole aspect is that you focus on certain sensations in your body, right?
Right.
So your mind is kind of watching that, and
Got it.
then you're sort of trying to capture your mind into that point.
Got
So
it.
this is more like the breathing aspect is really to bring that inner balance. So
Got it.
there has been a lot of studies which says that breathing practices can really impact your left brain, right brain coordination.
Right.
So I really feel like once you do the breathing and then enter meditation, you're
Right.
already in a much calmer state. So
Right.
you're kind of ramping down the RPM of the brain, to give an analogy.
Got
Um, so you're already entering in a calm state, and there is also some stretching that is involved before you enter meditation. And again, I think it's really bringing down the RPM of your body to a lower rev. And then you enter meditation, you don't get all these. Your mind is already in a much calmer mode rather than a wild mode, and then you can really enter deep meditation.
Got it. Do you have a preferred timings? Are you a morning meditation guy or an evening
Morning.
guy?
Yeah, most of the time, like 99% of the time, I do it in the morning. In those like scenarios where like my when we had our first child, like it was hectic, so I did it sometime in the evening that day. But otherwise, it was always in the morning.
And what's your morning ritual like? Maybe I'm very curious to know. So, is it do you start meditating right after you wake up, or you have some other rituals to do before that?
Usually, I just wake up, get a green tea, and then go take a bath, and then start meditation. Start this yoga, and start the meditation process. And then I usually come back, start some journaling or makes a plan for a day, and that's how I start. And do some writing in the morning after my yoga.
Wow. So you take bath soon after your morning tea. That's rare actually.
Yeah, so I take a, like a not a very warm. It's like not too cold, but like a kind of lukewarm water, right? And
Okay,
that really like wakes me up for the yoga practice. And it's
that's
actually like they say that like your body being wet is actually kind of good. It's like it has a cooling effect.
no, I can
Um,
imagine. I can imagine that you are fresh. You are more ready for
right.
yoga,
Yeah.
because I don't do that. I try to meditate right after I wake up first thing in the morning.
Mm.
However, I don't feel fresh. Like
Mm.
the act of meditation makes me feel fresh.
Right.
But I can imagine if you're taking a bath and then you meditate, it must be doing wonders. And just curious,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still harping on the topic of meditation, but it's
Sure.
important.
Yeah.
Uh, have you been consistent in the last 4 years since you have begun this practice? How
Yes.
consistent are you?
Yes. I haven't missed a day in the past 4 years.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. So what other benefits have you found? Has it made you more focused and attentive and less distracted? Ha- have have you been able to measure the benefits of your life prior to meditation and after?
Yeah, I mean, some things are very obvious. When you look back, it's very obvious. Like, I used to get this like temper sometimes, right? Like, you get angry, like you have bouts of anger. I mean, that was almost gone after starting the meditation practice. And obviously, it was not like a suddenly like a 1 day thing, but over time, I could see that I could really observe the anger rising within me, like slight bouts of irritation happening, and it would just kind of wither away before it
Right,
becomes like a storm. So it's like see these movies like a little storm happening in the sand and then it just dies. So it's almost like that. It just I can see that happening. So
right,
overall, it's like the enhanced awareness, um, the state of awareness that you are in, and obviously it really helps with the focus, the mental focus that you have. So people at work have noticed that I'm a much more calm and composed person, and that's something that they always say that that's my attribute. And that was not always the case. I sometimes before that, I used to have these bouts of like temper, or I'll go crazy or something. But that was like a huge change in my life.
got it. The other thing that is striking is your consistency. So when you start a new habit, a habit of meditation or journaling, usually
Mhm.
it goes through a phases of few days of doing and then skipping and then coming back and then skipping before it becomes a habit. Um,
Right.
Give us some tips on what has worked for you. Is it your own inner willpower that has helped you stick to something? Like when you said you haven't skipped, especially you have kids. Do you have two kids or one kid?
I have one kid.
You
She's
have one.
1.5 years old. Yeah.
Right. So somebody who's married, who has a wife, who has a kid, there are enough excuses to skip sometimes. But what you are saying is you haven't skipped a day, and I'm sure this actually is the same practice for most of your other habits. What is it about consistency that has worked for you? Is it your inner willpower, or maybe some
No,
tips you'll
I
give?
wouldn't call it willpower. I mean, in this case, it's just like brushing the teeth. Like we brush the teeth because we know that it's good for us, right? And then we don't skip a day because we know that it's really good for us. So like one thing that has really helped with the consistency is like my own inner conviction that really showed me how powerful this is for me, and like really understanding the value of these things. And it's like it's remarkably different before and after meditation. So it's almost like I need this. It's almost like an addiction at this point, right?
Hmm.
Like I need to do this to get the most out of my day. So I really, really, really want to do this in the morning. It's not like I'm dragging myself to do it. It becomes, first of all, there is an aspect of habit formation. So the
Yeah.
first 40 days, it's almost like very strict, right? If you stop it, then you have to start again.
Right.
So I think they really do a good job of like really making sure that you do the 40 days morning and evening,
Right.
right? And then you once after the 40 days is just like a one time a day. And within those 40 days itself, you will see this dramatic transformation within you
Right.
that you wouldn't want to stop after that,
Hmm.
right? And like
Right.
even when we were having a child, right? Like we were having the when we went to the hospital for the delivery of our first child. I
Right.
mean, even things were so crazy, and that we didn't have any help or anything. But
Right.
I truly believe that the only reason that I could sustain through that events was that because I was meditating, and there was
Yeah.
a chapel in the hospital where people can, meditate and sit and pray and all those things. So I used to go to the chapel and I used to practice the meditation inside the chapel there.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, so and my wife is totally on board with this because she also knows that how much changes that it has brought to my personality and my life, and she knows how much important that is for our family also. So I think once the people around you also start observing that why you are doing this, it not only impacts that person but also the people around you.
Right.
So from my family's perspective, if I'm a much more calmer and more happier person,
Right.
then as a family we are much more happier, right?
Right. Yeah.
um,
Obviously.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so, what would be your advice to people who? So, I'm sure you got some help. You said you had the 40 days initiation program that helps you to put into habit.
Right.
Other than meditation, any new habit, what would be your advice to people who just can't build an habit? They slip back to old ways after a few days, especially on a new year. Most people have their new year resolutions, but they fall back. What would be your tips to stick to a regimen with discipline?
Yeah, so what I have seen from reading and what I've worked in my life is this is a quote that I wrote on Twitter is macro goals and micro actions. But where people always overestimate their willpower to do things, and they always have these ideas for macro actions. They have macro goals and macro actions, and they want it from day one. But if you look at all the literature in like habit building, they always say that you have to start with the tiniest possible change or the tiniest possible action. So instead of thinking that I'm going to run a mile a day for like 30 days, like,
Right.
you need to start like very small, like go to the treadmill and walk for just 15 minutes
Right.
and find ways to make it enjoyable. Like listen
Right.
to your favorite podcast or listen to your favorite music. And then you're kind of making that action much more attractive, and then make
Right.
it much more small. It doesn't even have to be 15 minutes. You can even do it 5 minutes or
Right.
10 minutes. And the
Right.
thing is that it really takes out the friction from your mind, because
Right.
you can always make an excuse to say that, oh, I don't have 30 minutes to go for a run, or I don't have 20 minutes to walk because I'm busy with so and so. Like
Right.
you can never fool yourself and say that I don't have 5 minutes to walk. I
Right.
mean, that you just cannot fool yourself. So
Right.
you will naturally, take yourself to that place, and you'll be like, okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is nothing. I have 5 minutes. And
Right.
then once you get into it, maybe if you're feeling good, you'll do 10 minutes, 15 minutes, who knows.
Right.
That's one thing. And the other aspect is tracking progress is like super helpful. So like there is this, I think it was, I forgot the name, but he was there was a person. His I think he was like a stand-up comedian, and he was marking a cross on his calendar every day he writes, and he didn't want to break the chain. So that is a huge aspect. Like seeing progress is directly related to your positive emotion.
Right.
So you need to have that positive emotion as the fuel to keep moving forward. So
Right.
like make a mark on a like an index card, or like keep track somewhere, and you don't have to use complex systems. And this is something that I've seen, like people using all these complex systems. The
Right.
system has always should always be very simple and minimum friction, right?
Right.
So it could be like an index card, it could be like a sticky note or something like that. And that way you are not again bullshitting yourself to say that, oh, I don't have time to enter it into the system because the system is too complex.
Right.
So try to eliminate all this friction. And the third aspect is like social support, like social facilitation. That's like a huge thing. That if you want to do that, for example, if you have a support group, if
Right.
you want to write more, you can join like a writing group. If you
Right.
want to work out more, you can find like a workout group, and it just helps you keep accountable. um, like the people in the group will motivate you. They will make sure that you're doing your stuff. It helps with the accountability, and
Right.
accountability is like really huge.
Right.
um, yeah, so like willpower is like a very bad strategy to develop any habit.
Right.
It always comes down to simple systems and really getting it into the system over time.
Right. The comedian you mentioned was Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes, Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, yeah.
Never break the chain. Yeah. What other rituals you mentioned? Journaling. What is your process of journaling? What do you journal about?
Yeah, sure. So I used to have this habit of writing in my journal at night, sort of reflecting on what went well, what did not go well, what could have been better.
Right.
Um, but I recently started using it this in 2020. Roam Research, it's like a note-taking app,
Mm.
and within Roam Research, it's like really easy to, um, you know, note down your thoughts and like easily make notes. It's just like a frictionless tool. You don't
Right.
have to make categories or anything. You can just like add your tags, and it creates this thing called bidirectional linking. So
Right.
if you write, for example, a paragraph, and if you add the tag hashtag morning pages or something,
Right.
then a separate page called morning pages is automatically created, and wherever you wrote morning pages tag in your daily notes. So the interface is designed like this: when you open the app, you all you see is like a daily notes page,
Right.
and you just like dump your thoughts into it or dump your to-dos into it. You
Right.
don't have to go looking for a folder at all unless you really need to. So it really reduces the friction. And also, like when we had the kid, obviously there was again much more time constraints on like how much time I can dedicate to journaling and stuff.
Right.
So writing obviously takes more time. So this is not ideal. Like I always like writing more than like typing. Um, and there are much more studies that says that like hand printing is much more better for like conscious thoughts and conscious reflection. Especially for reflection, hand printing is better than typing. So
Right.
this is not the optimum way for journaling, but it still works.
Right.
um, it's like for me, journaling is dumping your thoughts on paper or a screen so that you can make sense of it.
Right.
Because we think that we are very rational thinkers and like we know what we are thinking and stuff, but our thought process is really like muddled.
Right.
So unless we verbally speak to someone else or we write things down, we are not thinking in a logical fashion. All our thoughts are going in a random way. We might be thinking about grocery shopping now, and the next moment you're thinking about your 10-year career goal,
Right.
right? So it's very random. But
Right.
when you force yourself to write things down, you really, really have to, close the gaps. You have to make sense. So it really helps in terms
Right.
of your thought process.
Yeah. That's what they say. Thinking on paper is powerful.
Yeah.
Thinking in mind is not effective at all. So it doesn't do much thinking in mind. So what
Right.
exactly do you journal? Is there are there specific things that you journal? You said what worked, what did not work. What exactly do you journal, or there's no pattern as such?
So when I switch to the morning pages thing, so morning pages, the idea of morning pages is that the first thing in the morning you just dump whatever is on your mind, right? So whatever comes to mind, there is no, and some people have prompts on like what they want to write, right? Like how am I feeling and all that kind of stuff. For me, I just want to like dump whatever comes to my mind, and sometimes I even surprise myself like what comes out, right? Because I'm just opening the screen, opening the Roam Research app, and just like typing away.
Right.
And then there have a couple of other things. I think I have something about self care. Most important thing of the day, like MIT, and then three additional actions. Like that's like, so I always make sure that I only focus on like one thing per day, and
Okay.
then I have these extra actions which are always like second priority. But
I,
there is only one most important thing of the day, so that's there. And then I have things I'm grateful for today.
uh-huh.
um, and then I write down something that I'm grateful for today.
Mhm.
And then miscellaneous. So I have this template in Roam Research that I've created, where I can note down these things.
Nice. I have a template on Notion, and I know you. You helped me understand the difference between what Notion does and what Rome Research does.
Right.
I have not yet dabbled with Rome. I'm sure in days to come. Notion itself has been a new tool for me. I was an Evernote guy for the past 10 years.
Right.
Uh, but Notion revealed a different world to me. I never knew somebody had the power to wean me away from Evernote because I thought the stickiness was way too tight. For 10 years of my content, my
Right.
life is documented on Evernote. But this is
Right.
what I learned about great products. Great products have the power
Yeah,
that.
exactly. It's like a breakthrough product, right? Like it's like a paradigm shift. I think like incremental products like can never like break through or like move your customers away because the stickiness, like you said, and like they're so comfortable there. So
Right?
unless it's like really really good, like people are not gonna move. And
Yeah,
Notion was
exactly.
just that, right? It's like your personal Wikipedia kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
So there is this concept of second brain. I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah.
Uh, so could you shed some light? Is it David Perel? No, David Perel is the writing guy.
Tiago Forte.
Tiago Forte. Yeah. Could you
Yeah.
shed some light about him? I'm sure lot many people do not know. Oh, and not just him. There are also some other not as popular as him as Tiago,
Right.
but everybody is talking about the second brain. What is the concept of second brain?
So yeah, so just as we spoke about writing, right? Like you see your thinking better when you write it on a piece of paper. So
Right.
memory almost works in the same way. We think that, we will remember stuff and all that kind of things. But
Mhm.
again, like our brains are very bad at like holding stuff,
Right.
right? So the idea of a second brain is that you kind of take off the load from your brain
Right.
and you use like a second brain, like an external cognition kind of thing. So
Right.
that could be in the olden days. What is it? It's like a notebook where you make your notes and you have your research and everything, and you
Right.
just have a good reference system or a good index system where you can easily find what information, where is that information. You can just go and easily find it.
Right.
Now, with obviously with all these digital technologies, it has made it much more easier, right?
Mhm.
So as long as you have a memory hook for an idea, if you have stored it away in a note-taking app like Evernote or Rome Research or Notion,
Right.
for example, if I have to think about capitalism, or if I
Right.
have to think about anti-fragile concept or
Right.
something like that, I can just enter the keyword and that whole idea will pop up, right?
Right.
Like all the notes that I have made. So again, the key principle is that your first brain, like your actual brain, is like a very bad place to store
Mhm.
lots and lots of information. It is really not built for that.
Right.
It's only built for like in the moment, or like very short term kind of idea storage. And like all the old memory in the your brain kind of does this delete function and kind of puts it away into obscurity. So it's a very bad place to store all these things. So
Right.
you need to have a second brain so that you can really really not just store things, but
Right.
you can actually come up with new ideas from that brain.
I
And
see.
and the Rome research is actually really taking this concept to the next level because it has this bi-directional linking. So
Right.
for example, if I'm thinking about the idea of anti-fragility,
Mhm.
um, I read an article online. Okay, I
Right.
make some notes on it, and then I read this other book online,
Right.
and then I make some notes on it, and then I feel like, okay, this idea is connected to this other idea,
Mhm.
and Rome research actually allows you to make that connection and to see
Right.
those connections.
Right.
So again, like you are a very bad person to observe your brain. Like you don't know what's happening in your brain really.
Right.
um, so like when it's all external, you can really see how it's all happening. It's like that, scene in the detective movies where they have all these cards and you make those connections, right?
Right.
Like that
Yes.
person
Yes.
will
Yes.
never be able to do that in his head. So that's
Right.
why he's putting all these cards and making those red threads between these concepts and like crime scenes and everything. So you're
Right.
doing the same thing
Right.
with the second brain, putting it outside, making an external tool so that you can think better.
Right. Excellent. And so, have you taken the course by Tiago
I
Forte?
haven't taken the course. I would like to take the course one day. Yeah,
But do
but I
you
haven't.
have? But at least have you started practicing second brain as such, like where you manage your content?
Yeah,
Uh,
I would say you can actually figure out like I mean, obviously people who would have taken the course would know better, but I guess like you could understand the principles of second brain just by reading Tiago's blog. I think his blog's name is Praxis. So
mm,
he talks a lot about what is the second brain and how to implement it and all that kind of things.
right,
So right now, Rome research is kind of my second brain. So whatever I read, it goes into Rome research. For example, if I read a book, I make highlights. I have an app called Readwise, and
right,
what Readwise does is it takes all my highlights and syncs it with Rome. So it is again going into Rome. When I'm reading online an article, I will either directly make a highlight on the article,
right,
and that I will automatically save it to Rome research.
right,
Um, when I have journaling, when I'm journaling, it happens in Rome research. So right now, Rome research is my second brain.
right.
So all my learning, all my thinking is actually stored away in Rome research, and I'm making connections. Even anything that I write, I usually go to Rome research to get inspiration or like to pull up old ideas.
Got it. In fact, the father of this entire second brain concept was David Allen, isn't it? The guy with
Yeah, yeah.
GTD.
So David Allen, again, I think he actually implemented this in the world of to dos, right? Like getting things done, and he
Yeah,
said like, you know, putting things to do in your brain is like really bad for you because like your brain is constantly trying to bring these things to the top of your mind. So
right,
if you if you want to buy milk,
right,
then even in the middle of working your brain is trying to almost like recycling this back to the top of your mind. So
right,
again, like when if you want to be in the moment, you
right,
need to get this out of your brain,
right,
dump all the to do so that it's outside. And
right,
Tiago actually built upon David Allen's. I think he used to do these GTD kind of coaching in his early days of his career,
right,
and I think naturally he built upon that idea of
right.
like second brain from that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 8 years ago when I was new to Evernote, I was following a lot of David Allen's concept. So I actually created the 20,000 feet view of my life, 10,000 feet view of my life, and the
Right.
0 foot runway of my life. But I never took it to the next level. So I almost created a course. I'm talking about 7 years ago,
Wow.
and
Okay.
and neither did I continue practicing it in my life, nor did I went ahead writing the course. But yeah, that's a different topic altogether. But yeah, I'm very fascinated about the idea that your brain, the biggest purpose of your brain is to think and to be creative
Yeah.
than to remember things. And it's like you talked about RPM and rev, right? It's unnecessary revving your mind just to remember things, to get milk and stuff like that. And that
Yeah.
has a big powerful shift in my mind. But I still struggle because I'm not always great at syncing all my information. So for example, now Notion is taking my information dumping, but the small information like have you been able to automate all of that using the, say you're outdoors and you get an idea, where do you put that idea so that you don't forget? What are your ways? Does it
So
go to your phone?
yeah, I use an app called Bear. Bear is like a writing app,
How
and
do you
it's
spell it?
it's like bear, like the animal bear,
Okay.
Bear.
Mhm.
And I think it's like bearapp.com or something.
Right.
And Bear app is like a very light markdown based note taking app. And it's like the real difference between Bear is that it's just like a pleasure to write on Bear. It's like the interface is like so good.
On
And
phone, on
huh?
phone you on phone
On,
you mean?
yeah, on phone, and you can always also have it on your desktop.
Okay.
So I write my newsletter on Bear because writing is just so much better when you're writing on Bear.
Right.
So it's really not built for this other kind of second brain kind of thing. You can do it, but it's really more optimized for like minimalistic interface that is optimized for distraction-free writing. So when I'm outside, I actually write down. If I have a thought, I will add a tag. If it's like for a tweet, I will sometimes put a hashtag like tweet, and I just like write down that. And what happens is it creates this folder automatically based on that tag, so I
Right.
can just like pull that up later on. So occasionally I clean up the bear and like put it into Rome. So
Got
yeah, that's my system for capturing thoughts on the go.
it. Is it integrated or you copy paste from where to Rome?
No, I have to export it. I can export it as a markdown file, and I can copy paste, or I can copy paste.
And you mentioned about Readwise. It's a paid app, I suppose, right?
Yeah, Readwise, it also has a free version, but I think the all this Rome integration, all this kind of stuff, I think you have to have the paid version.
Oh, awesome, excellent, cool. What else have we got? So you have this avatar. You are an engineer. You are an illustrator. You are a blogger. Um, but you also have an active live post job. So you're building a community. You're building a followership. You have a newsletter. So and then you are not just one of your kind or one of your breed. There is this entire community of people who have this second life, just
Right,
as second brain we talk, who are building something on the side.
right.
Where did this urge come from? Is it a void in your day job that you're trying to fill in this second avatar of yours? Help us understand this
Yeah,
entire scenario.
sure. I think it's like you said, it's almost like a void in your creative life, right? And I think the general kind of work environment tries to pigeonhole into this one kind of aspect of life. For example, like my profession is I'm a senior engineer at Pfizer, and
Right,
my day job is actually working on medical devices and developing product development on medical devices,
right,
and that's just one aspect of me, right? And I have these all these other aspects, like I love illustration, I love drawing, I love design,
right,
I love writing. um, but in the traditional corporate environment or in like huge companies, it
right,
is the environment is not optimized for creativity. The environment is optimized for productivity and efficient operations. So
right,
there is a routine, there are systems, there are procedures that you need to adhere to, and it's like a one track kind of life.
right,
But naturally people are multidimensional, right?
right,
So like for example, and I feel like it's almost like therapy, right? Like if you really want to write, or if you are really someone who loves to draw, like
right.
taking that aspect out of your life will actually shrivel your life, right? So if
Mm,
you don't exercise your creativity, you will
mm,
almost shrivel up. So people who are, and this may not be this case with everyone, but some people, they really want to write or they really want to draw, and
mm,
if you don't find that outlet in some way or the other in your life,
right,
like I feel like your life will become less rich, right?
right,
And I think this whole phenomenon of people having a second avatar out of their second life, out of their job, is
right.
people are finding ways. And this is like a perfect time and place in history where all the tools are available, right,
Got it.
to make that happen. Like, you want, and like, why would you simply draw, right? Like there should be a reason for drawing. And
Right,
then a good excuse is, okay, I'm going to share this with people, but where are the people? So all these technologies came along, like Substack and Twitter,
right,
um, where you can find an audience for your creative work.
right,
Whereas otherwise, like if previously, like if you look at the 80s and 90s, like you go to a day job and come back, like you might draw, but like no one sees it, right?
right,
But with the internet, you have this avenue, you have this audience. So it again motivates you to create more, to write more, to draw
right,
more, to make videos more, or whatever it is that you're into,
right,
for that audience. So
right,
it's like a symbiosis. The
right,
audience and the creator, they are in this together.
right.
And so that's like the main reason that I have seen. And the other whole reason is that you find all these amazing people
Mm,
on like places like Twitter and the internet, who are exploring all these alternate paths, and it's like really like increasing again like your optionality.
right.
Like I have friends from Twitter who are like Robbie Crab, he's into law, and then I have friends who are like into venture capital. And these people I wouldn't have met in real life in my day job. Uh,
Mm,
so it's not necessarily that you're trying to, get something out of it, or, trying to do a project out of it or whatever, but
mm,
it's just seeing. Um, it's almost like visiting different planets and seeing different kind of people, like aliens,
right,
right?
Right.
So you see all these different kind of people that live in the world,
Mm.
uh, away from your unidimensional bots of your corporate life, and
Right.
it just adds richness to your life, and
Oh,
it
yes.
even adds, um, it even shows you possibilities of what you could do and what is possible in the world.
Right.
um, yeah, it's all about the serendipity that it creates.
Right. So you mentioned a few things. I want to double tap on that. So you mentioned that people should not stop themselves from expressing their inner creativity and passions, and many people sadly do that. And you said it just shrivels your personality, and you, instead of expanding yourself, you are
Right.
shriveling, and that would be such a betrayal of your purpose and your life, isn't it?
Yes.
And earlier we did not have avenues, but now we have tools, we have people to support, people to get inspiration from, people to learn and partner with. um, so but then how can, so of course I found my passion, you have found your passion, there are some people who are still struggling to find their passion. Okay,
Right.
what would be your advice to see, okay, how can they experiment and try to glean what they know they have something, but they are not, still trying to figure out what are they good at. um, did you know what were you good at, or you are experimenting and learning and tweaking and then trying to find your niche?
Yeah, it was not like a sudden realization, obviously. It was almost like an iteration. Like you try all these different things and then you find out that okay, you are really good at this, you enjoy doing this, and there are people who are interested in this. So it's
Mm,
kind of like the hedgehog concept where you find this combination, where there is an audience and then you can produce it and then they consume it, and also it makes you better and you become good at it. So I would say for people who are struggling to kind of find their passion, like to look at the places where their interest naturally draws them. Like what kind of people do you follow already on places like Twitter or like Instagram or places like that on the
right.
internet or in real life, right? Why do
Right.
you follow them? Because obviously you like the kind of work they produce or the attitude they have or whatever it is,
Right.
and then look at the skills or the skill stack that you already have, like the talents that you already have, and
Right.
find like again micro actions, right? Find the minimum viable product that you can make out of it, the minimum viable content that you can create out of it.
Right.
So if you want to, and again, if it's in the knowledge domain, if you're curious about say one this micro niche about some kind of a video game or something,
Right.
start writing about it
Right.
online. And again, this writing will clarify your thinking. It will, and again, like if you just sit there and think about it in your head, you will
Right.
never clarify things. And as
Right.
you write more, you really discover what you really want to write.
Right.
And that's like the whole point of writing, to
Right.
really discover what you are, the way you think, and what you want to do in life.
Right.
Um, because it's really like seeing your thoughts. Most people
Right.
live their lives without seeing who they are, right?
Right.
And writing is really showing them who they are, because it's almost like a reflection of yourself on paper.
Right.
So then you
Right.
see, there is this aspect of me who is very interested in drawing. Okay, why don't I make some drawings then? And
Right.
then you make drawing. Maybe that sucks, that's fine. But the whole point is to improve. And even if it is creating like a value for like one person,
Right.
because of the drawing, maybe they learn something from it, maybe they
Right.
enjoy it, then what you're doing is worthwhile, right? And then that will give you the fuel to keep going.
Right. Would you have loved to convert this passion of yours that you do post day job and make it your full time job? Do you think you'd enjoy it if it were your full time job, or you love it because it is something beyond your full time job? Have you thought
Yeah,
about it?
I have thought about it. So I think you don't have to necessarily like make it your full-time job per se. Um, and this is sometimes like people could struggle with it. Like they find something that is really, really good, and then they're like, "Oh, I need to make this my full-time job." I mean, obviously there are ways to monetize like a newsletter or a blog or something like that.
Mm,
And again, like you create that optionality and see what comes out of it.
Right.
Whereas if you go into it with the expectation that I need to monetize this,
Right.
and it will kind of clutter your thoughts, and it will kind of change the way you perceive and change the way you create in the beginning. So keep that in mind. If something happens out of it, it's great. It's like winning a lottery. Like you write a blog and you make a living out of it, it's amazing, right?
Right.
But at the same time, if you are constantly thinking of how to monetize this thing, you will slowly suck the life out of it again.
Hmm.
And I truly believe that if you really do it for the fun of it, if you really put all your life into it, maybe something will happen, maybe something will not. But at the end of the day, all it matters is when you look back, you really did what you could do. And that's like the regret minimization framework that you should be following. Like, you should not be sitting there and thinking, oh, I could have done this, but I never explored it, so I don't know if I could have ever monetized and made a full-time living out of it. But you
Right.
tried it, and even if you don't monetize it, you enjoyed it, and people enjoyed it, and that matters. um
Right.
yep.
Thank you. So I'll come to monetization, which I think there is again a breed. Everybody is trying to monetize their passion, and I see why it is. But I would like to discuss with that. But before that, you talked about uh, socializing and building relationship on Twitter, and this is something that I tasted the joy of it. And you
Right.
mentioned about people like Robbie Crab and others. It is as rich as a relationship, a physical friendship that we have in a real life, flesh and
Right.
blood.
Right. Right.
And I see the same sense. I see the same warmth. I see the same support when I have this DM conversation. I sense the same with you.
Yeah.
We have hardly, it's been just 2 months or so knowing each other, but
Right.
there is a certain connection. There is a certain what is called fraternalizing, or there
Yeah.
is a for
Yeah.
that, a certain brotherhood, um, which is amazing. I have not seen such joy in any other social media, not even in Facebook,
Right.
not even in Instagram. What is it about Twitter that is so magical?
Yeah, I think there is a quote by Marshall McLuhan that the medium is the message,
Mm.
right? So if you look at the different mediums that you have, Facebook is optimized for sharing where you had coffee, where you had lunch. Instagram is optimized for making all glamorous and like beautiful pictures, whereas Twitter is a text-based medium primarily, right? And what is text? Text is primarily used to convey our thoughts. So
Yes.
essentially, the medium itself nudges people towards sharing their authentic thoughts,
Right.
what they think, right? And then what it does is you are able to see the mind of a different person, right? Whereas even in direct face-to-face friendships, like I have a friend, maybe I have a friend whom I know for years, but maybe we never went into those deep conversations where
Right.
you can really see what this person thinks, what are the kind of things that interest him and stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas in a medium like Twitter, you really see what this person is into, so it really takes out that barrier to entering deep conversations. So
Right.
when you start conversing through DMs, it's
Right.
like straight away you are entering that deep conversation phase where you're like, I really love your work, I really love your thoughts, would love to chat more. And
Right.
it naturally takes that natural progression to like a Zoom call where people are like discussing like
Right.
their soul and their hearts and their passion.
Right.
So you're opening up to people in a way that you're never opened up in your workplace or in your church or your temple or your
Right.
family circles. So it creates this kind of brotherhood and this social circle that's like very intimate. um, and that's the one thing that I've seen on Twitter. And like another aspect is like everyone is seeing that no one is competing against each other in Twitter. Like
Right.
everyone is doing their own thing because
Right.
everyone is bringing their authenticity to the picture.
Right.
So really there is no kind of jealousy towards each other. We all
Right.
want to grow together. We're in this together.
Right.
So yeah, that's another aspect of Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Renaissance movement,
Yeah.
where the entire movement for creative expression took charge, because everybody was in around Italy and around Europe. So that movement caught on, because the best minds of the world all converged in this city,
Right.
and loyalty started giving them money, and they started, the creative expression exploded. And
Right.
this is exactly, even though this is the everybody is geographically displaced, but because of this medium,
Right.
the likes collide each other, and then there is this community which everybody is learning from each other, and something beautiful is emerging. So somebody is
Exactly.
meeting somebody else with creative expression, and then
Right.
things are just getting better and better.
Right, right. And again, like you are not meeting these people for like a benefit sake. You are not expecting anything or like an outcome at this moment in time when you're making that connection, right?
Right,
It's more about serendipity and it's more about making that. It's like a senius. So there is a scene happening, and so there is this term called senius where a bunch of geniuses come together and it becomes like a senius. Um,
so
it's
what does S mean?
no, it's like a scene. So there is a scene of, like you
Ah,
said, like a scene of artists, a scene of
okay,
creators, and all this kind of things.
got
So when geniuses come together and create a scene, I think
right,
this term was in Austin Kleon's book, "Show Your Work" or "Steal Like an Artist." I'm not sure. I think it was "Steal Like an Artist." So
right,
you create the seniors. So Twitter is creating that seniors
okay,
where again, like it's again seeing that optionality.
right,
So like you see marketing people, you see venture capitalists, you
right,
see individual creators, you see illustrators, you
right,
see all these different kinds of people coming together and just learning from each other.
right,
And no one expects you to turn into this different other kind of unidimensional thing. Like
right,
people want you to be you, so that
right,
because Ravi offers a unique kind of skill set and unique kind of attitude that I
right,
can only learn from Ravi.
right,
And I don't want Ravi to be this other kind of person. So
right,
everyone is free to be themselves. So yeah, Twitter is like been like very life changing for me
right.
in terms of meeting all these people and learning so much. So I try to do my part in adding value to Twitter through my tweets and the stuff I share on Twitter. So yeah.
So I'm sorry, we should have spoken about this. What do you offer? What is your unique value and unique identity that you offer on Twitter?
Yeah, again, like, um, so when I come to Twitter, I think I came to Twitter in like June. I had around 150 followers at that point in time,
Right,
and I had really no clue how Twitter works. I had tried Twitter a few times and it never worked out. But this time I was like, I had time. It was a lockdown. I was exploring what it is,
right,
and then I poked around and then find Daniel Vassallo's Twitter course
right,
where he explains, his experience of growing his Twitter account to, I think he had like 20K followers at that point in time. Then I
right,
started then I started understanding, okay, this is kind of different. This is Twitter is almost like a town hall, not town hall. Sorry, it's like a town square where people meet, right? Again,
mm,
like we said, and there are all these people in the town square where they're congregating around these specific interests. Like
right,
some are congregating around like the second brain. There are like Rome Research fans. So there are different people hanging out in the town square, and you
right,
have to really go and like join those conversations and make connections and add value so
right,
that people notice you and people start following you, and they learn something from you. So it's like a different paradigm of thinking. And then I think now I have close to around 2,100 followers. So it was slowly I started joining conversations and engaging in conversations that were already happening. And
right,
then and I thought, okay, what value could I add to the town square? Like if it's like a geographical place,
right,
what could I add? So I naturally looked at the things that I already do
right,
in real life. Like I read a lot, I like drawing, so I
right,
try to combine these two things
right,
in Visual Wisdom, which is a Twitter page I created, and I
right,
started sharing these drawings every day, almost on a daily basis. When I started, now it's much lesser, like 2 to 3 drawings a week, maybe.
right,
Um, but I was sharing like a mental model, and it helped me and it helped the people. Because
right,
for me, when I was illustrating something, I've always noticed that I really remember that concept much better
Right.
understand it much better, and remember it for much longer.
Right.
So that was the benefit for me. And
Right.
by sharing it, obviously, people could really visualize that concept,
Right.
and they could really grasp concepts much better using a visual analogy or
Right.
something like that. So that's how I really got a lot of attention on Twitter initially when I was sharing all these posts, and people started liking it, they started sharing it.
Right.
And then when people came back to my profile, I was talking about other things also, like continuous improvement is a passion of mine.
Right.
So I talk about continuous improvement and things I learned there. And then obviously it's almost like a meta. Like I talk about content because I have seen how content can, change your life and change your thinking and um, make you learn more and make you teach people more. So I
Right.
started talking about content more,
Right.
and like because I almost wanted other people to start doing more,
Right.
because just because of the change I saw in my life, I wanted other people to dip their feet into content and start creating more content.
Right.
And the reason is that, like, you need to write more, you need to draw more, you need to produce something more, because it's not just to build an audience. It will really change you as a person, and because you will learn at least like 50 times more than what you would learn
Right.
without creating content. So I kind of evangelize about the need for creating content and
Right.
why you need to build an audience. So
Right.
these are and I call this the content triangle. I created a separate page called the first 1000, where
Right.
I share tips on like how someone should see Twitter and how they can grow their own Twitter audience.
Right.
And I'm planning to produce some videos where I talk about these different aspects, and I'll share them on First 1000 page. And again, this is kind of me trying to help my past self. Like
Right.
most of the advice that I give on Twitter is kind of for my past self, right? Like
Right.
what would I have told my past self like 3 months ago or 1 year ago?
Right.
And almost all the stuff that I contribute is like that
Right.
advice to my past self.
Excellent. Looking forward to your videos on first thousand. I would be the first one to benefit from it. So,
Yeah.
and the other point that you made is do something that you are immensely getting benefit from.
Mhm.
Uh, if at all you get followership, that would be only a bonus, isn't it?
Right,
So
right.
do it for your own value, and that's exactly why I do these YouTube videos, because I'm selfish. I want this knowledge from my guests, okay, all these impressive people that I get into my podcast, and it's only the outcome is of getting subscribers to my YouTube channel is the bonus.
Yep.
If there is zero audience for my YouTube channel, it would
Right.
still bother me, because I am happy with the quality of conversation that I have on my channel.
Exactly. So it's not really about the audience or subscriber count. It's really about the engagements and the connections you make on these platforms.
Right.
So, for example, for in your case, like you're doing this amazing job of having this podcast, and you make all this connection with all these guests
Right.
that you would not have maybe made in real life, or if you were not having this podcast, right? So again, like that's the real gold. And like
Right.
maybe like 3 years down the lane, you want to contact someone who is in, I don't know, real estate or some kind of niche.
Right.
And then you always have this person, and because you've already established this connection, like
Right.
you can directly reach out to them, and they could potentially help you at that point. So
Right.
you massively increase the optionality in your life through
Right.
creating content. And another aspect is like this could really help with employment, and this
Hmm.
is really like unexplored, and I want to write more about it because I've been seeing this on Twitter and other places where so there was this I think his name was Rahul Rana, and he just graduated college,
Hmm.
and he just landed an internship in a VC firm called Lutz Capital
Hmm.
because he was writing a book about startups that make like moonshots, right?
Right.
Like, and I think the name of his book is Moonshots. So
Right.
he did some research. So all he did was he was researching all these companies, and obviously
Right.
it's hard work, right? So he went through a book authoring program, and he
Right.
did research on what are the startups, and he started interviewing venture capitalists and people like through cold emails. And
Mm,
now he landed an internship because
mm,
he actually interviewed this person from that VC firm. um,
right,
and then obviously they were like, really interested in this. Okay, this kid is like, I don't know, 18 years or 19 years old, and he's writing a book. What? And obviously they were very interested in this person, and they wanted him to come on the team. So I
right,
think we will see more of this happening, where people would be kind of opinion leaders. Like, you could hack your way into being an opinion leader. And when
right,
I say hack your way, I'm not saying that in a derogatory sense. It's just
right,
that it's really an unexplored option that
right,
people will find doing. For example, like, if you're an engineer in like the electric car space, like,
right,
without revealing, obviously one aspect is like, if you're working for a huge company, they have all these legal terms that you cannot disclose certain details. But at the same time, without talking about product, without talking about proprietary processes, you can talk about fundamental observations like journalists are making. So
right,
imagine that you are a journalist and you're covering that space, and it really gives you two aspects. One is, you yourself will become much more educated about your own industry and
right,
the things happening there. And again, it really gives a way for your future employer to see how you think and the depth of your knowledge. Like,
right.
I always feel like the interviews are like very limited in terms of like understanding a person's
That's
uh,
correct.
right, like, aptitude and like their how they think. But at the
Right,
same time, if you have this body of work, that if I'm trying to hire you, if you have a blog, then I can really look at I can browse through the articles and see what
right,
is your vision and what are the kinds of things that you already interested in. So
right,
it really gives me a better opportunity to size you up as a person, and it
right,
really gives you that credibility. So
right,
this is already happening on Twitter. So again,
right,
like, okay, if you're not that kind of a person who wants to unleash your creativity, then
right,
do original research in your domain, do original research, and publish them just like a journalist would do. And the
right,
journalists, they don't know better about the electric car industry than
right,
an engineer who is actually inside the industry.
right.
So being an independent journalist in your own domain will really give you like a multiple um, over results
Right.
uh, for your career. Yeah.
Got it. Do you know about Alex Bunyan, the author of Third Door?
Yes. Yes.
So he's an example of how he hacked his career at the age of 18, where he interviewed the best minds around the world, including
Right.
Bill Gates. At the age of 18, he got access to this, and
Yep.
then his career soared because he wrote that very popular
Yep.
book.
And students have like a very good advantage because everyone wants to help students, right?
Yes.
So if you are in college and if you're not doing something like this, you're
Right.
really wasting that opportunity, because
Yes.
that's that period where you can knock a door and say, hey, I'm college student, I'm
Yes.
doing this thing, can you
Yeah.
help me? Whereas
Yeah.
if you are like some middle-aged guy, people are like, who is this crazy guy, just go away, man. Right.
That's so true, and that's why I'm always behind my cousin who is all of 19 years old, and I
Yeah.
give him crazy ideas. He's not able to make sense of it. But yeah, I sometimes feel if I were 19 today, I would have done
Yep.
all of these things. But
Yep.
then experience is something that it's like a comb that you get once you are bald.
Right.
So
Right.
you also mentioned about showing all the body of work before the actual face-to-face interview. So my mentor is Rajesh Sethi. Someday I will connect you with him. You will. He's an amazing personality. You will love to know him. So he talks about. So we all know about creating a first impression.
Right.
He talks about creating a zeroth impression, and zeroth impression is when this is exactly what you said. So have a body of work so that when you're applying for a job, let them have a sneak peek into everything that you have already achieved or you're done
Right.
or written.
Right.
So they already have formed a favorable opinion, and the scope of all that you know. They don't need to know any further in the interview, and all they want during the interview is validating whether what they
Right.
read about you is, so you're just making it easy for them
Right.
to choose you.
Right,
and
right,
and this is something that I keep harping on to all the youngsters who I mentor, and stuff like that. But I still painfully, it pains me that people still don't blog.
right,
and
right, right. Yeah, you almost have to like convince people and like bribe them into like starting a blog. It's like very hard for like people because people are like, what will I write about? I don't have anything to write about.
right,
um, so yeah, so like, yeah, just curate stuff. Like if you don't have anything original to write about, just read what's already out there, curate it, and just publish it, and they'll have a blog. Because like
yeah,
this is not a new concept. Like all the designers and artists, they already have like portfolios and like websites like Behance and stuff like that, where they have like a body of work like portfolio. It's obvious in those domains, but in the
right.
knowledge work, it's really, I think I feel like it's like the baby steps. It's like
Right.
really the beginning of this happening.
Right. So my wife was and also a reluctant blogger when she began her career, and I've been behind her write something, and she also felt the same, that what should I write? So
Right.
Gary V has this message that he has been, for the past 10 years, he has been saying, document your life. A
Yeah.
blog can be easy documentation of your life.
Yep.
I mean, every week you put in so much of work at your workplace. I'm sure you're learning something unique.
Right.
Just document your experience. What is it that you're learning? I mean, you don't have to create original content, but
Right.
what did I do this week? What did I learn this week? What are the conversations I had this week? What is it I'm learning from my book? Just put it together. And that's exactly my wife does it, because she comes from workplace, she shares a lot of things, and I tell her, wow, why don't you write about it?
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
and then she says, can I write about it? And now
Yeah. And I
she
think one
has
one one thing that sort of stops people from starting a blog, or discourages them, is that they don't have an audience, because a blog is almost like an island in the middle of nowhere, right? It's like an island in the middle of the internet where
right,
no one is coming to you. So one way to get over it is to join platforms like Twitter, where
right,
people are already hanging out, and then people are already talking about these things, and then
right,
you can talk about these ideas in Twitter as like micro it's Twitter is basically a micro blogging platform, right? So
right,
you kind of express your thoughts over there, and then
right,
as you build this minimum viable audience, like maybe
right,
20 people who are interested in you, that will actually get you going, because you know that at least 10 people are there to read this stuff.
right,
And like, you can actually reduce the friction for your audience, like turning their blog post into like a tweet storm, and then
right,
people already read the content, and then you say, okay, at the end of the tweet storm you add your link where you say, if you want to read it as an article, it's right here. So then
right,
you create this sort of engine. And also newsletter is a great way to enter this, because in newsletter, there is no way around it, right? You need to have some subscribers if you want to take a
right,
newsletter forward. So maybe you get like 10 subscribers, 20 subscribers. But what it does is that you know that every week 20 people are waiting your email. Even if they're
right,
not really waiting for your email, at least creates the psychological sense, like, think that, oh, someone is waiting for my email. I don't want to let them down. And it acts as a forcing function for you to put out 50, 500 or 600 words on some topic that you promised. So it's already a promise that you made, and a newsletter is a way to deliver it. And then you can repurpose that newsletter into a blog or a tweet storm or whatever it is. Um,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, so this I was just sharing with my wife this morning about imposing self-discipline by committing to an audience who are waiting for it,
right.
uh, which otherwise you would not be disciplined enough to write it all by yourself. But
Yep.
if someone waiting for your deliverable, you do that, and this is exactly what is happening. On a Saturday and Sunday, I run this. I think I shared with you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was an idea, I had acted upon it. 90 minutes deep work together session. Okay,
Right.
90 minutes of deep work. And then I just made it public to my network on. I do not have a big network on Twitter, but I have a Facebook group of 1,000 people. So I just posted there saying that, hey, this is what I'm committing to. Every Saturday, Sunday at this time, we'll go live 90
Yeah.
minutes, and these people sign up. And what I do is I pick up 6:30 a.m. Morning on a winter here in Germany,
Yeah.
which otherwise I would be wasting sleeping long. I
Yeah.
would wake up at 8 o'clock, or 8:30 or 9 o'clock sometimes. So I'm imposing that self discipline, and these people would be waiting because they are also have committed to do this 90-minute deep work session, and I cannot let them down. I have to show up. So that has it has become a great imposing self discipline, and it's working great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like social facilitation is like really great. Um,
Right.
and I have a writing partner, Daniel, and like we meet. We haven't met for 2 weeks, but we usually used to meet like every Thursday morning 6:30. And again, this was again like a forcing function for both of us to sit down and write like Twitter threads, um, and to share on Twitter, because otherwise, you may skip it or procrastinate or whatever. So having someone waiting on you and you're making a promise, and I feel like we are very good at making fulfilling the promises that we made to others than
Right.
fulfilling the promises that we made to ourselves. So
Right.
I would say, make use of that.
Right. Excellent. I'm just keeping track of time, but these
Yeah.
conversations I enjoyed so much. I just exceeded. Let's go on some of the important aspects of. So you mentioned about the continuous improvement, and you're passionate about it. What is it about self improvement that is that you're passionate about it? Why self improvement is important for you? Why what does not improving does to you, and why self improvement so important?
Yeah, and I think it's just like a regret minimization framework. Like, what could I have done with my life, right? And this is a question that we will always answer, at the end of our life or close to the end of our lives. And then you don't want to have the regret that you did not give your best. You did not try the things that you could have done, right? And
Mm,
again, like, self improvement or like self growth, all this kind of things is like you are trying harder and harder things. And if you want to
mm,
try harder and harder things, you have to get stronger and you have to get better and you have to become more effective. So again, it's like a forcing function. It's like a chicken and egg. Like if you can self improve, if you can improve yourself, make yourself 1% better, then you can do things that are 1% harder. And it goes the other way. If you keep trying things that are 1% harder, you have to force yourself to improve 1% more. And again, this is the only way to improve, right? If you
no,
try to put, yeah.
my question is, what is it what is the internal force that makes improving a virtue? Why not be content at where you are, and embrace comfort? And why a hard lifestyle, or why a hard practice? I mean, why not comfort and contentment is my question, because not everybody is on the path that you are in. Many
Right.
people embrace comfort and contentment. So what is it that draws you to become better? And
Yeah, I think comfort is good as a short-term strategy, but it's really unsafe as a long-term strategy. And I think it's really about awareness. Like if you're aware that you're capable of much more,
right,
it's foolish not to try to become that much more, whatever it is. And not everyone is aware, so awareness is the key. Like you
right,
have to be aware that these things are possible, right? And
right,
again, like when we talk about Twitter, like you see all these people doing these great things, and then you become aware. Like if I'm sitting
right,
in a village in South India, I'm not even aware that it is possible to, you know, talk on the internet or like write on the internet. I'm not even aware of it. So if I,
right,
you can only aspire to something that you are aware of. And the boon and the bane of the modern life is that you are aware of all the possibilities that's out there in the world.
right,
um, and you see that much more is possible. And then
right.
you have to, it would be just foolish if you don't try to aspire towards it or work towards it. um,
Got it.
and And like when you talked about contentment, and I think at the same time you have to have this balance of being content about where you are today while you are
Right.
on this journey of becoming your future self. Because
Right.
if otherwise the journey becomes a mess. The journey becomes so hard if you're not
Right.
content with what you have today. Because
Right.
you always have to see that where you are today was the result of all this hard work, and where you wanted to be a few years ago, and you are here.
Right.
And then if you're not content here, then you will not be content towards where you're going. So you need to have this sense of contentment and gratitude. At the same time, you should not
Right.
be stagnating. You should always be, because I feel like life is the best analogy for life is a journey.
Right.
And if you just have to move forward, you just have to keep going through the journey, because
Right.
otherwise you got this opportunity to make this incredible journey, and you just
Right.
found a good shady spot and you just slept there. I mean,
Right.
and when you wake up years later, you realize
Right.
that you forgot to travel, you forgot to keep going, and
Right.
that would be a huge regret.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned about shriveling. So I am a success coach. I coach a lot of people. So one of the things that I do is to teach people to reimagine a grander future, because not many people imagine. They have an incremental view about their future
Right,
because their brain and their mind, they only have references of their past and the
right,
present. So they are only thinking, their mind is not trained. They're only incrementally thinking about, okay, today I'm here, next year I'll be a step. So they only, if you ask them,
yep,
they will have a clear vision of 6 to 1 year. Post
right,
that, they have no clue where they are. So
yeah,
one of the things that I invest in is to train them to reimagine a grander future and to visualize what the bigger games that they would be playing in the future. Otherwise, if you do not forcibly and consciously visualize yourself playing in the future, your mind does not have references. Your mind will only make references to
right,
your old self, and your old self does not have that grand vision. And the analogy that I draw is, whenever you're trying, you visualizing to buy a car, you're planning to buy a car, immediately you will start seeing the same car everywhere on the road,
yep,
while
exactly,
while
yeah,
they were already on the road, because your mind is making these synaptic connections to just see that, okay, there is a decision to
mhm,
be made. So it's actually making everything possible, and it is becoming even more self-aware.
right,
And that's exactly how to push yourself to your future. And this is, in fact, one of my core. So everybody is creating their unique identity on Twitter. So my identity is that I help people accelerate their journey towards their grandest self. And many people, so one girl who was arguing with me, and he said, oh, you know what, so her reference was his father, and her father was a government official,
mm,
and he lived within his limited means, and he had an honorable life. So she told me, my father led an honorable life. He had smaller ambitions. He was happy. He is contented. And that is how I would like to live. But I, as a success coach, always push for the biggest ambitions, the more
right,
expansive you, because for me, growth is life, stagnation is death.
right,
And I give the analogy that, okay, put up uh, just stagnate water, what happens? It smells, it rots, it
right,
putrefads. A flowing water is always fresh and alive. So
exactly,
I didn't tell her that, no, I don't judge your dad. Each to each his own. Everybody has a template on how to live.
right,
The template that I have picked is, I am not going to cut short my ambitions, because my purpose of life is, if I am not living to maximize the limits of my potential, I am betraying the purpose of my life. So
right,
when I die, I want to die with the satisfaction that, you know what, Ravi, you did everything that was possible to push the limits of your potential. I squeezed myself and die with the satisfaction that I did everything and tried everything. So, yes, I did not know. I went into this monologue, but I'm so passionate about this topic
yep,
that I could not help sharing. So, last, I not take much more time. I think 90 minutes is great. So you are quite thoughtful. You are quite intentional about living. You have this. you have this habit of reflection about absorbing life, not being hurried, not being shallow, but actually having deep, meaningful connections, and also drawing as much as possible from your life. Um, where does that come from? You also write monthly reflections, and you have these curiosity chat notes. So tell us a bit about this kind of a lifestyle. What has it done, and what was the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so I think the reason behind monthly reflections was again like looking at the rearview mirror, and see what happened in the past 1 month, and it's always been a forcing factor for me. I just started doing it a few months before, and I feel like memories. You have to create good memories, and that's really what all it is about, right? Like in the journey, you gave your best, you created great memories, and sometimes in when life is busy, you may forget to take those pictures and make those good memories. So like
Right,
monthly reflections, I try to it's mostly like a photo based reflection that I have. So like I in my mind there should be some picture where I took my family out, we went some place,
right,
we had a friend gathering at a friend's place, we did something new, and all these kind of things, and I tried to like create this album together. um,
right,
and that's like my monthly reflection. So I have an idea of this, where this month, how this month should look like from a
right.
qualitative perspective, and these pictures are evidence that I try to live up to that expectation. um, and again,
So,
this is,
what
yeah.
does reflection? What does reflection do to you? How does it improve the quality of your life? Just reflecting, because most people do not reflect. They just go from one day to another, 1 week to another, 1 month to another, and a year to another, never sitting and reflecting how the days passed by. What has it done to you?
So it's a recalibration for me. So I feel like all the goals that we take are based on what experience we have, what we knowledge we have at this point, and the goals that we make for like 3 year goals or 5 year goals, they
Hmm.
they may be taken from a perspective that you had in say 2018 December, at whatever experience you had, whatever life experience, work experience, and perspectives. I mean, every
Right,
month life is dynamic, things are
right,
changing every day, every week, you know
right,
and that can change your perspective, and
right,
it's a constant recalibration. So when I reflect, and I look at the journey forward, and I ask myself, am I going the right direction? Am I
right,
putting too much focus on an area where I should not be focusing on, or am I focusing too little on an area where I need to focus more on? So like family, so it's trying to create this balance again. Like I'm not a person who is like all career, no family kind of person. I truly
right,
believe that you need to have that family, that loving relationships, rich
right,
relationships, along with progress and growth and ambitions and all those kind of things. So
right,
if you have an imbalance, you have $1 billion in the bank, but you don't have a rich family relationship, again, your life is a
right,
failure. Um, so these reflections help me recalibrate my goals, recalibrate what I want out of life. So yeah, so it's just like, and also I feel like it's again like creating a record for my posterity, for my children. And
right.
also like when we are old, I don't rely on my memory. So if I have a record of what 2020 was really like, because we are
Right,
storytelling animals. 10 years down the lane, if someone asks you about 2020, the account that
right,
you give them will be completely warped based on
right,
your whatever faint memory that you have, and like your brain
right,
actually stitches a story together. So if you have,
right,
let's say, like pictures of exactly, and like maybe a few sentences, it doesn't have to be like an
right,
essay or anything, like a few sentences under each picture, what you did, overall thoughts on the month, and like that's like a crystal clear
right,
account of what 2020 was. If you want
right,
to write about, say, if you want to write a memoir, right? Like towards the end of your life, you want to write a book, an autobiography, a memoir. You can
right.
use all these things. So it's just like creating all these little second brainy kind of things. Yeah.
And it also brings in a certain amount of depth in your life, isn't it? Because
Yep.
you're not just sleepwalking or dream walking through life. You are absorbing life in its
Yeah,
grandeur, in its
right.
richness, and
Oh yeah, I have had so many moments where I see my little daughter smile in a picture that we took, and like in the reflections, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what life is all about. Like this is what it is about, right? And like it really, really helps me focus on what is important. It's a reminder for me that don't ever forget what life is all about. Ravi, so your screen is frozen.
hey, uh,
Oh
sorry,
yeah.
I think internet is also saying that we are about time.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, sure.
just to continue where we left, yeah. So you were saying that the smiles of your daughter uh, makes life even more enriching when you observe it keenly, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, those these moments, they really like put things in perspective on what life is all about, and give you the real sense of meaning and purpose, and helps you recalibrate your priorities in life.
Right, right, yeah. So I spend a lot of time also on reflection, and sometimes to the point that I people think I'm weird. Like I crossed 40, and then I wrote this long message to my classmates, batchmates, who all turned 40. Okay,
Mm.
and so I wrote this. So I said, okay, I'm feeling old, and this is how feeling 40 has given me a weird sense of timing for my age, and this that, and nobody responded. And they all felt, what is wrong with you, Ravi? So but it was part of my reflection, and yeah,
Yeah, I
the
think isn't there a quote that says, I think, I don't know,
an
Plato's
unexamined life is
is
not
not
worth
worth
living.
living. Yeah.
So
So
that is, so that is my
yes.
favorite quote,
Yeah.
and I have that at my shelf as well. So an
Yeah.
unexamined life is not worth living, and
Right.
I've seen the joy. I don't do it for the sake of doing, but I see the joy. I do not know. Some people say, "Oh, you are an insect, Ravi, because you are dissecting something so deeply which is not required." But if it gives me joy,
Yeah.
if I'm reflecting on an experience, and I'm getting richer, and my self growth, because if you're not reflecting, how are you growing?
Right. Right.
Okay, how are you transitioning, how are you improving? I mean, uh,
Yes.
I think the quote also is, if you can't measure, you cannot manage. So if you
Right.
really
Right.
want to improve your life, you
Yeah.
have to see how did the last year go.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My
I
wife
mean,
and I,
the last thing you want to do is spend your life sleepwalking through it and looking back and seeing that, oh my God, I did everything wrong and my priorities were all messed up. I focused
right,
on the wrong things. I did not give attention to my family. I mean,
right,
that's the last thing that you want to. That's not a good way to leave the world. You want to leave the world. It's like a vacation. You come here, you had a very good vacation, and at the end of the vacation, you're happy
right,
because you did do it. You saw the places that you wanted to see. You did the things that you wanted to do. You had a very good vacation, and I'm happy to go. Whereas
right,
if you really messed up the vacation by doing some stupid things,
right,
then you are like, oh my God, I don't want to leave. So yeah, so it's a good way to leave planet Earth. Come here, have a good time, do great things, explore what life is all about, so that you can leave fulfilled.
right. So just last two questions before we leave. You make curiosity chat notes. Why are they important for you?
Again, like it's my own way of forcing myself to note down what we really discussed. Because
Hmm.
the next time we have this conversation with these people, I want to make sure that like if they mention any books or they spoke about any topics that they're interested in,
Hmm.
I want to capture that. Like the reason I started doing this is because I've known that we have these conversations, and then after a few days, if I think about it,
I cannot remember, right? Like, because what exactly we spoke about. And
Mm.
also it really helps other people,
Right.
um, on like, okay, who is this person, what did they talk about? So if I had
Right.
some key insights from this conversation, I'll just put it in the curiosity
Right.
notes. Yeah.
Yeah, my mentor Rajesh Sethi, I mentioned about him. He has a very popular blog post. It's written "No insight left behind." So
Yeah.
all the successful people, they're very greedy to learn.
Right,
So
right,
they would not let go of a good idea in a conversation. They would not
right,
let
right,
go of good ideas in a book. So they all are note keepers.
right.
So I think this is also a trait that you are demonstrating that. So you're hungry for knowledge, you're hungry for insights, and what a waste it is if you are having a conversations and you're not
Yeah,
able to clean, because next
exactly.
day within a day and within a week, you just all these things would evaporate from your mind, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. Yep.
Last question here is on your Lindy Books offering. Maybe you could shed some
Yeah,
light on what
sure.
is it, what is the project
Yeah,
all
again,
about?
like, we are all, like people like us, we are like so hungry for knowledge, and we are so curious, and like we want to read the best books, right? And this is some concept that I came across when I was listening to a podcast from Naval Ravikant, and it's about, you reading the foundational books in any field is actually very important to creating a strong platform of knowledge. And the one main problem is that the whole bestseller list, or the New York Times bestseller list, that may not be the best place to look for books that you want to read if you want to read like a, like a rock solid foundation of knowledge. I mean, the concept of Lindy, was popularized by Nassim Taleb. And what he says is that the longer a book has been around, the probability of that book lasting much longer is the same, right? If a book has been around for 50 years, then
Right.
the probability of that book staying around for another, it's like another 50 years,
Got it.
right? So you want to read the original books from those domains, like, if you look at economics, like, it's, you want to read, The Wealth of Nations, rather than a new economics book, or like a popular finance book that is out on the market. And
Right.
if you want to read about like evolution, you have to go back and read like Charles Darwin.
Right.
So, the Lindy books list was again like a selfish thing that I did. Like,
Right.
I created like a list of 100 plus books,
Right.
called Lindy books. And
Mhm.
then when I spoke to one of my friends on Twitter, called Sharat, he is actually no coding. He's like a startup investor, and he's like a startup guy. So he actually told me to, make a product out of it and like just put it out there for people. So I
Right.
made this Notion database of Lindy books, and with Amazon links and everything.
Right.
So, it's really hard to read those books. I mean, these are not easy reads, but
Right.
these are books that are really worth it. So I
Mhm.
have been going through like Lindy books. So right now I'm cleaning my information diet. So focusing lesser on the hottest book on the market, which
Right.
may vanish into obscurity like 1 year or 2 year later, because most of these current nonfiction books, if you look at it, it's really just like one core idea wrapped in 300 pages,
Right.
right? And it could have been an essay or a blog post,
Right.
but obviously how book sales work, they want to take it into a book. And if you
Right.
look at many books, they start as a blog post, but then the publisher approaches them saying that this blog post is widely popular, or they approach a publisher and say, so the publisher will be like, take this blog post and make it into a book.
Right.
So I would say just read the blog post, save time. You still
Mhm.
get the same idea, and focus on foundational books.
Well, thank you. This brings us to the end of a fascinating conversation with Deepu. Thank you, Deepu, for your time and sharing with us your wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And all the best for all that you are doing. And I'm just keenly curious to see what all creative ventures that you get into and share it to the world, add value to the world.
No, thank you, Ravi. This was a great conversation for me as well. I mean, these conversations are always helpful for me as well. Again, like talking helps me put my thoughts into like, words, and I listen to that myself. And I always learn something from talking to great minds like yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
that's an honor. All right, Deepu. See you then. Bye bye.
Bye.